Okay, so we're going to learn a new mimer today. We've been on a streak now of learning some Amorim from Tafshin Lamed Ches from 40 years ago. We mentioned that it's the 40th anniversary from Rish Chedesh Kislev, from the events that took place, from the heart attack and the Rebbe's subsequent recovery. And so we learned a mimer Tishrei that the Rebbe said, the first mimer the Rebbe said after suffering the heart attack. We learned a mimer from Chanukah, Tafshin Lamed Ches. That's the last mimer we learned, also from that period of time. And now we're going to learn the last mimer that the Rebbe said from his room during that period. So after the heart attack, the Rebbe was in his room, as we discussed. We don't have to review all of this again, but the Rebbe would speak from his room via a hookup, intercom system to the shul downstairs. And 70 was also broadcast around the world. And already after Rish Chedesh Kislev, the Rebbe went home, and then the Rebbe would come down and farbring downstairs. So you had Rish Kislev farbringen, you had Chanukah farbringen. Zois Chanukah, which was just yesterday, was the day the Rebbe hosted a Suda Seidah farbringen, a Thanksgiving farbringen on Zois Chanukah. We discussed the story. It was a surprise farbringen. The Rebbe had reached out to maybe Uncle Hecht to arrange the farbringen, and there was a farbringen where Rebbe sort of closed out all the things that were missing from Simchas Torah, Kaishal Bracha, and that was a farbringen from Zois Chanukah. The following week was Asar B'Tevis, and the Rebbe said this mimer from his room the night before Asar B'Tevis. The mimer, just like the other sichos, the sichos HaMamarim, the talks and the discourses that the Rebbe said from his room during that period, was immediately transcribed, and the Rebbe edited it, and it was published. It was released the following week. So that time when the Rebbe was, under instruction from the doctors to scale things back, and the Rebbe didn't want to scale back any of his schedule and his burden, during that period we merited to have a whole bunch of mamarim and sichos that the Rebbe had said that the Rebbe then edited, which was unusual. So this is the last mimer the Rebbe said from his room. Yehuda Ata, it's from next week's parsha, from Parshas Vayechi. So before we get into the mimer, let's just look at the psukim so we have a bit of a context for what's going on. So the mimer is based on the blessing that Yaakov gives to Yehuda. Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov is about to pass away, and he calls his sons in and he blesses all of them. And so this is from the blessing to Yehuda. So the pasuk says, Yehuda Ata, this is the pasuk Parshas Vayechi, chapter 49, kapitel Mem Tes, pasuk Ches. So Yehuda Ata Yeducha, Yehuda, you will be praised by your brothers. Yadcha ba'eref evecha, your enemies, your hand will be on the nape of your enemies, on their neck. Yishtach v'lecha b'nei avicha, the sons of your father will bow to you. Gur Arya Yehuda. Yehuda is like a young cub and like a lion. Miteref b'ni Alisa. You raised yourself above your prey. Kara Ravatz Ka'arya Uchalavi Mikimenu. You crouch like a young lion, like a lion, and who will dare to rouse you? Yep. Yasser Shevim Yehuda. Next pasuk. Yasser Shevim Yehuda. A staff will not depart from Yehuda. Mechekek mibein Raglav, or a lawgiver from among his descendants. Ad ki Shiloi, until the arrival of Shiloi. V'loi yikas amim, and before Shiloi, all the nations will gather. So that's the blessing to Yehuda. Basically, we're talking about Yehuda's leadership, his sovereignty, and the fact that Yehuda will be is the progenitor of the Jewish monarchy, and he's the father of the Jewish monarchy, and then nobody will dare fight with him. So the Rashi talks about the different prophecies, what that alludes to, about the young lion. The lion talks about the time of David HaMelech. Nobody's going to dare fight with him, and he's going to be able to rule. And then Ad Ki Shiloi, which is a reference to Mashiach, that who will be the gatherer of all the nations. Everybody will come together then under Mashiach in that time. Okay, so those are the psukim. That's the first part of the bracha to Yehuda that the mimer is based on. So let's go. Earlier in Gimel Parshas Vayechi, so it's Monday night. Parshas Vayechi, Asar B'Tevis. It's the evening of the Asar B'Tevis. Yafach L'Simcha should be transformed to joy. B'Chadrei, in his room, which, as we discussed, this was the last mimer that the Rebbe said in his room during that time, Hey Tafshin Lamed Ches, 1978, probably at this point already. January 78, maybe still December of 77. Okay, Yehuda Ata Yiducha Achecha, Yehuda, your brothers will acknowledge you. The Rebbe explains in the beginning of this week's parsha in Torah Oyer, She Yehuda hu al Shem hapam oides havai. Why is Yehuda called Yehuda? Why was he given the name Yehuda? Because of the what Leah said when he was born, that hapam oides havai, and now I will thank God, which is ubechinas hoidoya shebechol sasham Yisrael. This is the general thanking, the thankfulness of the souls of Israel to God. So when at the birth of the Shvatim of Yaakov's sons, so when each child is born, they're given a name, and the reason for the name is given, and we'll get into the ones that are relevant to our conversation here soon. Why was Yehuda called Yehuda? So Leah, when Yehuda was born, she had already given birth to her allotment of children for Yaakov. So she said, "Apam Eides Hashem, I have to thank God that I managed to hold up my end of the bargain, and even beyond that, because if you were to divide the 12 tribes divide them between the 4, so she was already ahead. So she had more than her share then that she was able to have, and so she was thankful to Hashem. Now, the Shvatim, it's not just that they're the fathers of a specific tribe, but also it's a lesson for all of us. So when we talk about Hapam Oides Havaya, this idea of Yehuda thanking God, acknowledging God, so this is a reference to the acknowledgement of God that's present in all Yidden. So, in order for this acknowledgement of God, meaning this surrender, because when you thank God, when you acknowledge God, that's a form of submission to God. So in order for this submission to be revealed, to be manifest, it's through your brothers. What does that mean? So the simple meaning in the pasuk, Yehuda Ata Yiducha Achecha, Yehuda, you will be acknowledged by your brothers. So the Rebbe is retranslating it here based on the Alter Rebbe that Yehuda, in order to get to this level of Yehuda of acknowledgement is Yeducha. How does Yehuda have Yeducha? How do you acknowledge? It's through Achecha, through your brothers. It's the brothers that bring it out. What's the brothers? Reuven, Shimon, Velevi. His brothers, his older brothers who came before him. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Hem hagormim umeviim bechinas ha'achim shel Yehuda. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Reuven, I skipped the line. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Ha'achim shel Yehuda shenodu lefanav. The brothers of Yehuda who were born before him. This is the meaning of your brothers will acknowledge you, not that they will acknowledge you, but they are the cause who bring about that the Yehuda, the concept of acknowledging God, submission to God, is revealed, is through Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. That it should be revealed. So again, it says Shatib Izgalos. In other words, a neshama essentially has this acknowledgement to God, this submission, the surrender to Hashem. That's always present. What is the pasuk telling us? That in order for it to be revealed, to be manifest, that's through Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. It's not that they bring it about. It's always there. It's always present. But in order for it to be revealed, to be manifest, we'll get into later in the Maimer what exactly this means. That's through Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Alter Rebbe continues in his Maimer in Torah Oyer to explain Reuven v'Shimon who inyan beis parshas the Krishma. Reuven and Shimon correspond to the first 2 parshas of Krishma. Krishma has 3 parshas: Shema and Ve'ahavta, that's number 1. V'hayim Shemaya is number 2, and Vayomer, the parsha of Tzitzis and Yitzias Mitzrayim is number 3. So the first 2 parshas of Shema correspond to Reuven and Shimon. The Levi who inyan emes v'yatziv shala achri Krishma. And Levi corresponds to emes v'yatziv, which comes after Shema. Through that we come to Shemon Esrei, Bechinas Ha'idoy, Va'abitul, the Bechinas Yehuda, which Shemon Esrei, which is Ka'avda Kamimari. It says that when we daven in Shemon Esrei, we stand feet together silently. You don't make any noise because you're standing then like a servant before his master. We stand before God in total submission. So that's Shemon Esrei, is the idea of Bittul of Yehuda, of total submission and surrender. So we have, it's through Shema, V'hayim Shemaya, Emes V'yatziv, that we then arrive at Shemona Esrei. So we'll get into this connection, but the point is that you have the idea that the neshama is surrendered, is batal to Hashem, and acknowledges God. That's always present in the neshama. How is that manifest? How is that revealed? That's through Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. That's how do you arrive to Shemon Esrei? You get to Shemon Esrei through Shema, V'hayim Shema, and Emes V'yatzav. That's how you get to that next step, as we're going to explain. So what's the connection between Reuven and Shimon and Levi with Shema and V'hayim Shemaya and Vayim and Emes V'yatzav? So that's what the Maimer is going to continue now. Okay. V'inyanhu kemavur b'Torah Rishon. What does this mean? So as the Alter Rebbe explains in the Maimer, there Dehine Reuven hu al Shem ki Ra. Shimon al Shem ki Shama. As we mentioned, the Shvatim were named for a specific reason. There's a reason given for their names. Why was Reuven called Reuven? So Leah named Reuven because she says, Ki Ra Hashem. Hashem saw my oppression, my suffering. So the Reuven was called Reuven because of Re'iyah, the concept of seeing. Shimon, she says, because Hashem heard my suffering. So Shimon is from Shama, Reuven is from Ra'ah. So you have Re'iyah and Shmiya, seeing and hearing. What does this mean? So Vinyanam, B'Avedis Hashem, what is then Reuven and Shimon in our service of Hashem? Yisrael, each and every one of us, as we mentioned, these experiences, the stories of the Shvatim and their names are meaningful in each of our own lives in our service of Hashem. So B'chinas Reuven hu shavidas elokainoi, hi loy b'chinas hasag levad, ki im b'chinas riyah. Reuven represents a service of Hashem that's not simply through understanding, through intellect, but through seeing. What does it mean that we serve Hashem not through understanding but through seeing? So it means that the conviction that the person has in godliness and in God is with absolute certainty. Just like when a person sees something, it's impossible for you to convince him otherwise. He knows what he saw. The conviction as a result is so strong that it can't be moved. Because he himself saw it. If you remember, before Shavuos, we were learning the Sikha, the Hein Hein Lav Lav Sikha. Remember? So over there, the Rebbe talks about the difference between Re'iyah and Shmiya, seeing and hearing. He references it here in note 6. That so the Rebbe says like this: what's the difference between seeing and hearing? So there are two differences. There's a difference within the person himself and a difference in the thing. The difference in the person is that when a person sees something, it affects them, it impacts them much greater than hearing. Right? That's why the halacha is ein eid nasa dayin. If you witnessed something, you can't then serve as a judge on a case. Because if you saw it, you can't be swayed. You know what you saw, and no argument will be able to sway you from what it is that you saw, so from what it is that you know. So a judge has to have an open mind, has to be able to be persuaded by one argument or the other. But if you saw something, then it's not possible for you to be persuaded one way or the other. You know what you saw. Because seeing impacts you in a much deeper way. As they say, seeing is believing. Then you have hearing. Hearing, on the other hand, doesn't impact you the same way. You hear something, and it impacts you, and you can understand it, and understand it very well. But if somebody comes and makes an argument another way, you can understand it from another angle. So hearing doesn't connect with the person, doesn't impact the person to the same extent as seeing. Similarly, what do we see and what do we hear? The Rebbe says the difference is not just in the people, but also in the thing. What is it that you see? You see something physical. Why? Because the material world is our reality. That's what we relate to. Therefore, we see, how do we absorb the physical world around us? Through sight. Because we're physical people living in a physical world, therefore we see physical things, and that's why the impact of that vision is so powerful on us, is so impactful. Whereas hearing is abstract. Hearing is more spiritual. So matters of spirituality, things that we hear, those are things that remain a little distant from us. Right? They're not our immediate reality, and so therefore, because it's not our immediate reality, we don't have as much of a conviction as a result of it. So I can make an argument one way, make an argument another way. So that's the difference between seeing and hearing. So when we say that we serve Hashem in a manner of seeing, what does that mean? It means that godliness is so real to you, that's your reality. Just as you see the physical around you, that's how you relate to godliness, in that manner of conviction and attachment, connection. So that's the idea of seeing Hashem, of seeing Re'iyah in serving Hashem. That so is true with regard to our service of Hashem, that the person's contemplation, especially in the concept of Hashgacha Pratis, as the Rebbe says in note 7, why especially Hashgacha Pratis? Note 7, Royim b'muchash, because Hashgacha Pratis is something, divine providence, something that you actually see in your daily life. And Eisef Yisichus Tafshin Gimel on 119, Hachiluk Shebein Hizbonus Bein Yesh Me'ayin Hizbonus Bashkacha Pratis. Somebody asked the Frierdiker Rebbe at Fabrengen, what's the difference between Hashkacha Pratis and Yesh Me'ayin, the Hizbonus? And the Frierdiker Rebbe basically said what we're saying here, which is that Yesh Me'ayin is an abstract concept. It's a very complicated concept, a very big philosophical concept. So therefore, a person can make a mistake. You can come to some kind of mistake when you're contemplating these things because they're inherently unrelatable to you. Whereas Hashkacha Pratis is something that you can't avoid it. It's something that you see. It's something that you see in everyday life. And so therefore, the conviction, when a person's conviction in the reality of the Eibush there is much greater when he sees Hashkacha Pratis because it's relatable in your everyday life. So when a person has his bonus, his contemplation and godliness, especially in the Indian of Hashkacha Pratis, he ba'efin the histaklus. It's in a form of histaklus, of deep seeing, she'inyan mis ames etzle ki'ilu roya be'iyah chushis mamish, that the thing becomes so connected with him as if he sees it literally. U'me'iyah zu ba'le b'chinas avas havaya. And when a person has this level of serving Hashem in a manner of seeing, what does that lead to? What kind of an emotion, a reaction does it lead to? It leads to loving Hashem. Like it says about Reuven. When Leah called him Reuven, she says, Kira, that Hashem saw my suffering, and now Ki Ata Yevani Ishi. Now my husband will Yehovani, he will love me. That Re'iyah, seeing, leads to love. And that is Krishma. This is the first portion of Krishma, to love Hashem your God. Right? So note 8, the Rebbe just says, this idea of histaklus. Reuven means seeing, histaklus meaning to see something in a way that it becomes one with you. That it leads to a great conviction in the form, just as the impact that seeing has on the person. That's the idea of serving Hashem. So, Reuven is serving Hashem through seeing. Serving Hashem through seeing means that God is so real to you, it's as if you see Him. It's seeable. And therefore, the impact it has on you is very, very deep, very profound. What happens as a result of that when you see godliness, when it becomes real to you? And in practical terms, particularly, where do we see that in Hashkacha Pratis? When we see the hand of God in everything that we do. And sometimes you're blessed to see it more than other times. But the point is, just a mere, it starts with hisbonenus. Sometimes it just throws itself at you, Hashkacha Pratis. Sometimes it requires a little hisbonenus, requires a little contemplation and reflection to start connecting the dots. But when you do that, it's unavoidable. It's right there in front of your eyes. That's the Eibush there running the show. So that leads to a love of Hashem. When you see Hashem intimately involved in everything that's going on in your life, so that seeing leads to love. That's Parsha Yishayim of Krishma. The first Parsha of Krishma talks about V'ahavta Hashem Lekecha. How do you get to V'ahavta? Through Shema Yisrael. What's Shema Yisrael? So you say Shema Yisrael, Shema is hearing, but what does Shema mean? When we say Shema Yisrael, we're not talking about really the concept of Shmiya here. We're talking about more, even though we're using the term Shema, but it refers to seeing. Because Shema means to in Yiddish you say to der Herren, nicht Herren or der Herren. What does it mean? That it has to be a conviction. In fact, Shema, the word Shema, actually is a Rosh Tevis. We learned it in one of the previous Mamarim we learned. Shema is Rosh Tevis, Su'u Marim Einechem. To lift your eyes to heaven, meaning seeing. Concept of seeing, that it's not just that you know it to the extent that it's as if you've seen it. So when a person internalizes this concept to such an extent, the Shema Yisrael, they say about, there's a Chassidic word, why is it in the Torah, so Shema, the word Echad, Hashem is one, Echad has a big Dalet at the end. Why does it have a big Dalet? So Chassidim would say, because the Dalet looks like a hammer. So you have a big hammer, because Medaf is an klappen and cup. It's something that you need to hammer into your head. So that relates in general to the concept of the significance, which we're not going to get into now, the concept of Yehuda Ata, that there's nothing other than God. That's a concept that needs to really be hammered home. But also simply, the concept of Hashem, Elokeinu, that Hashem is Havayid, that's transcendent, is intimately involved in everything. It could be seen. That's the idea of coming to know. That's the idea of Shema, to have that conviction in a way of seeing. And as a result of that Havayid is Elokeinu, the transcendent God, is Elokeinu, He is Koichenu v'chayusenu, He is our very life force and animating everything that's going on. What does that lead to? It leads to a feeling of closeness. It leads to a feeling of love. Just like when you see something, there's a relationship between you and the thing you see. When I see something, like we mentioned before, the impact of seeing, that what do you see? You see physical things. And that's why the impact is so great. Because you and physical things, there's a connection between physical man and physical matter. There's a relationship, there's a closeness, there's already a connection, and therefore the impact is much greater. So when we say Shema, we see godliness, it connotes closeness, that there's a connection between the two. That connection leads to a feeling of love, Ava. And that's why we see also in the pasuk where Leah names Reuven, where Reuven represents serving Hashem through love, through seeing. What's the result? What's the impact? Is the Avani Ishi. The idea it brings to love, brings to Ava. So that's how we see Reuven is the first parsha of Shema. Obchinas Shimon al Shem Kishama, who sha'avayda shaloi bebchinas shmiya v'hasaga levad v'loi bebchinas riyah. Shimon, hearing, represents a service of Hashem that's analogous to hearing, through understanding, not through seeing. Since hearing, as we said before, hearing, you hear the abstract, you hear what you don't see. So there's a distance between you and the concept that you're understanding, that you're contemplating. So since there's still a distance, just like a person who's told, when somebody tells you of something that happened, the implication is that you didn't see it. That's why you had to be told about it. If you saw it yourself, nobody would have to tell you about it. The fact that somebody's telling you about an event means that you didn't witness the event. And so therefore, you didn't see. Therefore, the result is serving Hashem in a manner of yira, of awe. Why? Because love connotes a bond, a closeness between the lover and the object of his affection. And love is the idea of moving, is a movement towards. So love is a feeling of moving towards the thing that you love, the one that you love. Fear, on the other hand, or awe, yira, when we talk about yiras Hashem, we don't mean being afraid of Hashem in the terms of being afraid of punishment and the like. We're talking about an awe of Hashem's greatness. In awe, you retreat backwards. It creates a distance between you and the thing. The thing is so awesome, it's so great, it's so profound, that you feel far away from it. Yeah. Not back up in the sense of disconnecting. You're afraid of disconnecting. But there's a distance that's present, that's felt. The idea of awe means that it's motivated by the distance that you feel from the thing. It's so great, it's so much great, just that whenever you're in the presence of greatness, you feel distant. So the feeling is not a feeling of getting closer, it's a feeling of distance. Right? Something's great, you retreat. If you're in front of somebody that you feel perceived to be much greater than you start stammering, you lose your tongue, you can't speak. What is that about? You're afraid to come close, to draw near. So, and again, it's not because you're afraid of something negative. It's the awe of that greatness. So when we feel that, when we serve God in a manner of hearing, meaning that God is still distant and abstract. So what do we understand? We're contemplating God's awesomeness, His greatness. As a result, the feeling is a feeling of awe, of distance. So we see the idea of hearing and distance are connected. Again, like we said before about the idea of hearing, we hear things that we can't relate to immediately. The things that are abstract. Right? We don't relate to spirituality, therefore we process it in a manner of hearing, meaning that with a distance. So this is the second parsha of Shema, which is V'hayim Shemaya Tishma'u. It begins with the concept of hearing, Shemaya Tishma'u. Not like Shema Yisrael to have that conviction of seeing, but Shemaya Tishma'u, Hishamru Lechem Pen Yifta. The whole concept is presented in the second parsha in a negative way. You're going to hear my commandments. What does it mean to hear? Means to heed. To heed, to follow my commandments, lest you violate them. What the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that the motivation for doing a mitzvah, a positive mitzvah say, is love. Because I love Hashem, therefore I want to come closer to Hashem. How do you come closer to somebody? By doing something for them. But mitzvahs leisas are motivated by fear, by yira. That's why Ava and yira are both components of serving Hashem. Ava motivates doing the mitzvahs, and yira, fear, motivates not violating, not committing a sin. Why? Because committing a sin is a passive act, not to do something. What holds you back from doing something? Or why do you not go ahead and actively violate? Because you're afraid to sever that connection. So because there's a connection, I don't want to sever it, I retreat, I don't do the negative thing. But to get me motivated to do something, that's the concept of coming closer, that's motivated by love. So serving, doing, mitzvahs say is motivated by love. Mitzvahs like to say, not violating commandments, not committing a sin, that's motivated by fear of God. And when in the second parsha of Shema, Yishamar Lechem Pen Yifta, the whole thing is couched in a way of not to go astray, not to violate the commandments. Why? Because this is the form of serving Hashem through fear, through awe, and through Shmiya, through hearing, where there's that distance. Since the whole concept of godliness to him is only in a form and manner of hearing, that's how the second parsha begins. So therefore, how is that? What service results comes as a result of it? The service of Hisham Lechem. Be careful not to violate the commandments. That's the type of service. So Reuven is Parsha Rishona that we explained. Shema Yisrael, seeing leads to Vahafta, to love. Shimon is serving Hashem through hearing, that represents Yira, fear, and that is the second Parsha of Shema, the idea of not violating the commandments. And what's Levi? We said Levi is Emes V'Yatziv. B'chinas Levi al Shem Yilave Ishi Elai. Why was Levi named Levi? So Leah says, actually, the truth is, Hapam Yilave Ishi, she says Hapam Yilave Ishi Elai, but it says that Levi was named by the Eibishter. Without getting into that, but she says, "Hapam Yilave Ishi Elai." Now my husband will cleave to me, will connect with me. Yilava is the concept of connection. Humasha acher krishma omrim emes v'yatziv v'chulu hadavar azaleinu. What do we say after Shema? Emes v'yatziv v'nachim v'kayim. The famous trivia question: where in davening do you have 15 words in a row that start with the letter Vav? Right? So v'yatziv v'nachim v'kayim. All these things are true and wonderful and everlasting. What are we talking about? Hadavar hazeh aleinu. That whole run-on sentence in the beginning is all to get to Hadavar hazeh. This thing is emes v'yatziv v'nachim v'kayim. What is this thing? This thing is Torah. Hadavar hazeh koyal to haTorah. Torah nasi yilave ishi elai kedel, because through Torah we get to this idea of cleaving to Hashem, connecting to Hashem, as we will explain momentarily. So we explained Reuven and Shimon, Av and Yira, Re'iyah and Shmiya, and Av and Yira. Therefore, they relate. They correspond to the first two parshas of Shema. The first parsha of Vahafta, which is Ava. Second parsha, which is Vayim Shemaya, which is Yira, and then Levi, which is Torah. That's why he relates to Emes V'Yatziv, because Emes V'Yatziv is all about Hadavar Zaleinu, the idea of Torah, the impact of Torah. What is the impact of Torah? Why is it that Torah brings about this idea of connection? So Bira Inyan. So to explain, Gimel B'chinas Hanal, these three levels, Reuven, Shimon, V'Levi, Heim Gimel Hakavin Shalema Elam Oimed. Reuven, Shimon, Levi are the three pillars on which the world stands. Gama Elam Katan Zeh Adam, including the small world, which is man. Atam Kriyim Adam, the you, reference to Bnei Yisrael, are called Adam. So Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. These three pillars on which the world stands are Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Torah, the study of Torah, Avodah is davening, Gemilas Chasadim, and acts of kindness. B'chinas Reuven, Ava, Hukav, Gemilas Chasadim. Reuven, which is love, he is that's the pillar of acts of kindness, which, as we explained before, Kikasha Yeshle Avas Hashem. When the Rebbe explains another detail in it, that when you have love of Hashem, Yeshle Gam Avas Yisrael, you also have love of your fellow. Sharei Avas Hashem Avas Yisrael Kol Echad, they're both one. Therefore, he performs acts of kindness because he loves the Eibishter, he loves God, and therefore he loves his people, and therefore he wants to do acts of loving kindness. Ki Ava he sibas hachesed b'nimiusa. As we explained, Ava is the reason, is the impetus, and the inner aspect of Chesed, which is Amshacham l'maylamata, drawing from above to below. Chesed is drawing from above to below. In what way? Because when we talk about Chesed, kindness, what does kindness mean? I am giving to you, right? So in that sense, why am I giving to you? In the sense, when one gives to another, who's above and who's below? The mashpia, the giver, that's the higher one, you would say, and the one who's receiving is the one who needs, who lacks. So in regards to that specific interaction, that relationship, the giver is above and the receiver is below. So Ava, Chesed, the idea of acts of Chesed, that represents an avodah of Milmai Lamata, drawing from above to below. It says, we're going to get to in Basi Lagani soon about the Dalid and the Hay, but the Aleph, last night's word about Aleph is Gimel. But so Gimel Dalid is Gmol Dalim. Gimel is Gmol, to give, Dalim is to the needy. if you remember from last year, and this is just to warm us up for this year for Basi Lagani, which is coming up, Dalid is the Dalim, the receiver. That is Dal. Dal is somebody who's needy, somebody who requires. So the giver is the Mashpia who gives from above to below. Shimon Yira who kava Aveda. Shimon, which is that's the type. That's Aveda, which is Inyan Tefillah. That's prayer. Kav Hasmoil, which is the left column. Tefillah Gufo Inyan Parsha Shnia the Krishma Canal, and specifically within davening, we're talking about the second parsha of Shema, which is Halam Lamata Lamayla. Tefillah davening is referred to as a ladder that goes from below to above. Davening is the process through which we rise above. Davening is that concept of refinement, self-reflection, and reaching higher, trying to transcend our lowly experience to connect with Hashem. So davening represents an aliyah mamatal mayla, a rising from below to above. And that's the idea of Yira. B'chinas Levi, al shem Yulavi Ishi Elai. Hukav HaTorah. Levi, which we didn't explain, we're going to explain soon. Levi, the connection between the bond between me and my husband. Hukav HaTorah. That's Torah. Because it's through Torah that reveals that Israel and God are one. That the Jewish people and God are one. This then is the meaning of Yulav Yishalai, my husband will cleave to me. Through Torah, we form a connection, a bond between us and our husband, God, so we become one. This is why Levi is emes v'yatzav, the level of Torah. What does this mean? So if Alter Rebbe explains the Tanya, we just learned it in Tanya in the daily shir, that Torah is unique, and that Torah fashions a unique bond, a bond that yichud nifla she'en kamayu, that the Rebbe says. It's a wondrous bond that has no parallel. When we do a mitzvah, it's sort of a one-directional connection with Hashem. We do the mitzvah, and Hashem sort of surrounds us. We're doing His act, and He surrounds us. That's why mitzvahs are referred to as garments. Torah, when you study Torah, you have a two-way connection. A two-way bond is created. Why? Because when you study Torah, your mind absorbs divine wisdom. So what happens is you have the concept surrounds you, and you surround the concept. Right? When a person understands an idea, you say you've grasped it, you've got it grasped. It's one of the reasons why the reason why you have to respect the Talmid Chacham, a scholar, is why? Because he has divine wisdom in his mind. So it's the divine wisdom that's embedded in that mind that you have to respect. So you see, it's a double sort of connection where the person, so to speak, surrounds the divine wisdom, and the divine wisdom surrounds the person. Furthermore, through Torah, we come to a much deeper bond with the Eibusher because we start to understand things in the way the Eibusher sees things. We start to develop a godly perspective on things by understanding Hashem's perspective. So the bond that happens as a result of Torah is a much deeper connection. So whereas serving Hashem, performing mitzvahs asay, mitzvahs through Ava, through Yira, that's a one-way sort of connection. You love it, Ishi Elai, that by the cleaving of me and my husband, Jewish people and God, that happens through Torah. So that's how we see that Levi, the concept of cleaving, corresponds to Torah and corresponds to the section of Emes V'Yatzav, which is all about Torah. How are we doing on time? Do we have some more time, or it's 10 past? Okay, so we'll continue. Mitzvah Hashem. We have to then get to what remains to be resolved is how we started by saying that there's an essential bond, an essential acknowledgement, a surrender, a submission that the neshama has to God, but it's revealed. That's always there, but it's revealed through the three brothers that come before Yehuda. That's the concept of Yehuda. It's revealed through Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So we explained what Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are: serving Hashem through Ava and Yira, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. So those three levels, forms of serving Hashem, and it's only through those three stages and through Parsha Rishon of Shema, Parsha Shni of Shema, and Emes V'Yatzav that we then come to Yehuda, to Shemini Esrei, and to this level of revealing this idea of acknowledgement. How is it that they lead to that acknowledgement? That will continue, Mitzvah Hashem, the next class.